Yeah, no, just in a couple of seconds it will go live. Now it is.
All right, a very good morning to each and every panel member of this e-panel discussion on personal, professional, and spiritual life post-COVID. I also, on behalf of everyone at JK Lakshpat University, extend a very hearty welcome to all the members who have joined in for this webinar. As I said, the topic is a panel discussion on personal, professional, and spiritual life post-COVID. Couple of things before we get on with the discussion are as follows, with my prayers that trust each and every one of us, including our eminent panel members who would be briefly introduced by the coordinator of the session shortly. I pray and hope each and every one of us are staying safe and observing various norms, directions of the government and their respective institutions to stay safe and healthy. Yes, we all know these are unprecedented times, but as they have come, they will go, for sure. But at this point in time, what triggered me basically to get ahead with this topic when it comes to a panel discussion by the eminent speakers on this topic, will share with you what came to me from my heart and where are we and what do we expect the esteemed panel members to be talking about in their discussion. But before that, maybe Ashwini has to just give us an overview. How are we placed in terms of this panel discussion very quickly?
Thank you, sir. A very good morning to one and all. And I welcome you all to this panel discussion on personal, professional, and spiritual life post-COVID-19. We have the pleasure of having with us the panelists in the form of Dr. Archana Shukla, who is Director, IIM Lucknow, Dr. Himanshu Rai, Director, IIM Indore, Dr. I.K. Bhatt, Vice Chancellor, Manav Rachna University, and Dr. R.L. Raina, Vice Chancellor, JKLU, who would also be acting as the moderator for the discussion. I take pleasure in introducing the panelists for today's panel discussion to the attendees. Dr. Archana Shukla has been a professor of OB HRM Group at IIM Lucknow since April 1997. She has also been Dean IIM Lucknow at Noida campus during December 2009 to January 2013. She is a PhD in organizational behavior from IIT Kanpur and has more than 28 years of teaching, training, and research experience. She has been the recipient of first chairperson of Dr. Ishwar Dayal Chair for Futuristic Issues in the Behavioral Sciences for a period of 2 years from 2015 to 2017. She has also been a keen researcher and has authored a number of books and research papers. As a trainer, she has conducted a large number of MDPs in the areas of team building, managerial effectiveness, general management, and developing a strategic mindset. On behalf of all of us, I welcome you, ma'am, to this panel discussion. We also have with us Dr. Himanshu Rai. Dr. Rai has been a professor at IIM Lucknow during 2006 to 2014. He has been Dean MISB Bocconi, Professor at SDA Bocconi, Milan, Italy. He is a doctorate from IIM Ahmedabad and teaches negotiation, justice, leadership, and business research methods courses. He has been consulting with World Bank, Planning Commission of India, International Finance Corporation, UP State Road Transport Corporation, Mahindra & Mahindra, Hero Honda, and Seva, just to name a few. He is also an NTSC scholarship holder and an Infosys fellowship recipient. He loves adventure, reading, and music. Sir, I welcome you to the panel discussion.
Thank you.
We also have the pleasure of having with us Dr. I.K. Bhatt, who is the Vice Chancellor of Manav Rachna University. Earlier, he was professor at MNIT Allahabad, director at MNIT Jaipur during May 2011 to June 2016, Director at NIT Hamirpur during October 2005 to 2010. Earlier, he was lecturer and reader at IET Lucknow during 1986 to 1994. He is a mechanical engineer by profession, a PhD from IIT Kanpur, and BE honors from NIT Srinagar. Dr. Bhatt, I welcome you to this panel discussion on behalf of all of us.
I think my introductory slide can be done away with, as I told you. Just that's okay. My students and my faculty know me, so you can just skip this in the interest of time.
The attendees are requested to put in their questions in the question answer section. The chat box would be disabled during the entire panel discussion. You can address your questions to either any one of the panelists, or you can keep it open to all. To use the initials of the panelist if you want to address a question to a specific panelist. We'll be taking it up post the presentation is over by the panelists. Thank you so much. Over to you, Rana sir.
Thank you, Ashwini. Once again, a big thanks to each and every panel member for having readily agreed to my request to be a part of this session. As you would have seen from the brief profile that was shared, we couldn't have thought of better people, better resource persons to be with us at J.K. Lakshmipathy University to guide us through this critical phase, the most turbulent time that we are witnessing on these three areas. Having been the people they are, as was introduced, their backgrounds and whatnot, expertise, and we as the university at J.K. Lakshmipathy University, being in the areas of engineering, management, and design, could not have thought of better people than the present panelists to do justice to the topic. And the thought that triggered me, I'm just taking the liberty of sharing that once again, was when we heard that something of this kind has started in China way back in December, we thought, okay, it is China, quite far away. But as it started unfolding its colors, it went to almost all parts of the globe, right? So we took a pause when we were really affected in the month of March, and we took our government, our Prime Minister took some very, very strong decisions and bold decisions. So we got really little alerted, more than what we would have normally been, that something has happened, right? So when I was looking at it personally, at whatever level I am, and I know I form a very, very minuscule part of what inhabits our country, and looking at how it has impacted me as it started unfolding its colors in a country like India, as a person, then as a professional, and then ultimately, taking recourse to Almighty, I thought it would be in the fitness of things to see now, since we are about 2 months, close to 2 months over in this game as far as India is concerned. So we have good bit of experience of living with the situation. And if we have that experience, how do we leverage on the learnings that have cropped up during these 2 months or so, looking at what the situation in India is, looking at what the situation globally is, and what is the way that we have to learn the hard lessons of life to live successfully in years to come. That's where I said, if it impacted me personally in terms of my role, relations, responsibility towards myself, towards my family, towards my relations, in whatever was talked about, social distancing, washing hands, touching parts, so on and so forth, all areas, right? So how did it impact me as at the institution that I am professionally in discharging my duties, and how I had to struggle the ways out to take on the challenges that were posed by this. And also ultimately, when nothing came to my kind of understanding, how do I bow myself to that Almighty to tell me the way forward? So with that backdrop, I thought it would be in the fitness of things. Now, since you have seen the profiles of these great panelists, I will confine my remarks in between and also towards the end. But I would request each panel member spending about 10 to 12 minutes first maybe as I mentioned their names by Archana, then Bhatt Sahab, and then Himanshu, to talk about as to how has been our experience in terms of these three components that we thought could be aptly discussed and deliberated upon this session very briefly. On the personal part of it, I request Archana ji to talk about it for about 10-12 minutes. And then I would go to Bhatt Sahab, who could just tell us about what has been his experience on the professional front, right? How has he seen the impact of COVID scenario on the professional aspect? And then we would request Himanshu to just deliberate on the spiritual front, because three put together are the facets of the same thing. They are, if I may say, integrated and woven in such a way that you cannot make any watertight compartments insofar as these three components are concerned. But at the same time, these three aspects have been critically impacted and are going to have long-range implications for us to stay ahead, right? So it is with that backdrop, we'll just open up the discussion on the personal aspect of it with Archana. I know for sure, as I said in my opening remarks, a situation like this has come. Situations like this have come earlier also, and we have come out winners. It is just that this time it is of a kind of an, as we have been saying, unprecedented nature, traveling from China all over the globe without any visas, stuff like that. And now a small little virus has created havoc all over mankind on this planet. So it is irrespective of whosoever there is in front of it, rich, poor, elder, urban, rural, and the way we have seen its impact touching all across aspects of humanity, right? We know what are our conditions. We are slightly better off, and we, as I said, we constitute a minuscule portion of this country. But looking at the plight of people all across the country and all across the globe, I think it's a time for all of us to take a pause and reflect how we can emerge as winners in this kind of a tragic situation that we are. With these few words, once again expressing my gratitude to each and every panel member, I request Archana to start what she has to say for about 10 to 12 minutes. Over to Archana.
Thank you, Professor Raina. Thank you for choosing this such a wonderful topic, and it's very comprehensive one, because I think you have not left any aspect of our individual life now left behind when you have chosen this topic itself, because the range is all encompassing. So you started with personal, then you went to professional, and now maybe some answers towards the end will be found in spirituality, and combining these two aspects of our life, which are too integral. And the very beautiful part of this entire COVID-19 experiences have been that all of us were locked down inside the house. Yeah. And we were so, as a mankind, as a human being, over the years, our life was so hectic and we were so activity centric, and we were not wanting to, we could not think of life like this, that it will completely come to a halt. And this is a scary thought for many of us who were not used to this kind of taking pauses in between, or come back and rethink about your life, or plan your life, revisit some of your what you are doing and your pathways and your goals. So suddenly what has happened to many people, and I personally have gotten a lot of calls and concerns that how long it is going to continue. So another thing which we are not used to during this time is to deal with the uncertainty. And this uncertainty, when it prolongs and you do not have answers, so all the more people have lost their composure. Some of people started doing that we are anxious and fearful. So many parents, like if you talk about students, many parents started asking these kinds of questions, that how long it will continue, what will happen to my student career and all that. So unforeseen, we were not used to unforeseen. That is another thing which we have experienced during this time. And third thing was that, when no activity was there, so this was the time for people to, or rather all of us, to start rethinking about some of our own, personal things which had taken a backseat. So this was the time when everybody took interest in understanding that what is the future course of action now onwards. So I think I can talk about personally that we rather continue to do over planning. We did so much of planning, and every day it is being planned because you do not know what is the future ahead. And that's the reason only thing you can prepare is every day think through and understand how it is unfolding and prepare yourself to take an appropriate response. So for that, what I felt was individually, personally, to be mindful is very, very important. Staying alert is very, very important. And many of the people have lost this habit of being alert because our gadgets had taken over our daily lives. So all of us were so digitally competent and so active in social media that life was full. And the moment you were cut off from some of these, platforms, there was an emptiness in life of people that what to do? There is nothing to do. We are sitting at home. People think sitting at home is nothing to do. Now that itself was a very big connotation. You may be sitting at home, but it is not equal to not doing anything. The only thing you are not doing is to travel to your office, yeah, or travel to your school. But rest of the 24 hours are fully under your control. And within this 24 hours, there are lots of issues which we have neglected over the years, like personal health. Now, this is the time to get back to your personal health. So many people utilize this time to get back to their, exercises, yoga, pranayam, and following certain spiritual lectures, or started reading a lot. I also heard that many people have started upgrading themselves. Yeah. So they utilize this time for building up the skills. With what kind of skills, I don't know. Over the years, I always wanted to have those skills, but I was not getting time to, build on that. So they started registering for some online courses. And every day you will see in social media that they are popularizing that, okay, I completed this certificate, I completed that certificate. Yesterday, just I was talking to a colleague and he mentioned to me, I'm learning, after 20 years, I've started learning programming. And over the years, it was a forgotten skill. Now I realize that it should be up again. So the point here is that personally, this is the time for rejuvenating ourselves. This is the time to rediscover ourselves. This is the time to take care of all those who are in and around us. We hardly had time to spend quality time with our family members and people who are near and dear to us. We were not able to take care of them. I think the way nature has taken its own course of correction and remedy nature has found without human intervention, and the cure to nature has happened. And therefore you see air is so clean, pollution free, no noise pollution, no air pollution. Water is so clean. So birds, animals, everybody is freely moving on the roads. So nature has taken its course, natural course. Same way, individuals also have gotten this lockdown to take a natural course, come back again, think about those you had forgotten about. And you were not able to even call up your parents. You were not able to even ask about their well-being. Yeah, they were wanting to see you, you were wanting to see them. Now this is the time, talk to them every day. Feel good about that you are taking care of people. So what I feel personally, that there are a lot of dimensions in all of us. We should explore, we should utilize this time to rebuild, rediscover ourselves and reinvent ourselves. We need to also talk about that post-COVID, if we going to continue like this for some more time, then what is the kind of vision for yourself? What is the kind of goals for yourself? Because all of us have experienced in 40 days, more than 40 days, a new way of life. And that new way of life was not selfish life. And that was not life which is centered around you and your limited sense family. Now we realized that this is the time we need to also talk about others, because whatever others are doing is impacting us. Whatever we are doing impacting others. And therefore, it is a collaborative effort. Now the entire journey is together, even though we are looking like solo travelers, but we are traveling together and we are making effect and impact on each other. So that realization is a big realization sitting at home, that today we are not only talking about us, we are also thinking about everybody. Yeah. And this is good sign, because people will come out of their own comfort zone. They will start showing empathy. They will start relating to people, and they will explore the world little differently. Yeah, they will be available to provide help to the needy ones. How many people took call on their own? And this helping attitude was not like government had to prod you, but you started doing on your own. And we had enough examples which we continue to see in the media and social media, that how people are now talking about not self alone. People are talking about the entire ecosystem. And I think that is a big, big change in the attitude. So this attitudinal change is going to sustain for a long time. As these people talk about not only self, and they take the entire ecosystem around them, because it is moving together. Cause and effect cannot be separated out. Yeah, you may be very well behaved self-lockdown person, but if your neighbor is not, even then you are in risk. Yeah, so that's what the realization is today. So I think post-COVID, life will be simpler. People would learn to live with limited resources. Yeah, longing for hoarding, longing for more, unnecessary, keep on accumulating things which you don't need ever, right? All those things will go away, and realistic mindset will come. And that realistic mindset is that you start living again a balanced life, because you know what is actually helping you, what is not. Artificiality to some extent will take a backseat for some time, because the human aspect of this COVID-19 is very, very painful. We in India, we are still talking about thousands. And if you think about the world over, and maybe 2 weeks after, we may also move around the same numbers. Now we need to be prepared for those kinds of unforeseen, unprecedented kind of impacts of COVID-19. And this can only happen by the human beings coming together. Yeah. So as a culture, as a mindset, as a person, we need to rediscover certain things in all of us. And I think I'll break here and listen to some more thoughts and come back again if there is a need for building upon that. I'm not able to hear you. You're muted yourself.
Thank you, Archana. The way you are a person quite positive in nature. I didn't get even a word in your discussion which talks about any as such negative impact of COVID insofar as a personal life of a person is concerned. You talked about this is the time for that person to look at his life or her life differently, make connections, do something which he or she has not been able to do thus far, wanted to do, connect with the family, connect with relations, upgrade himself. So all of this, if I summarize in one word that you have articulated so well, is all that it is something very positive that has come to a person at personal level, right?
Yeah.
Maybe when we talk to another colleague, Professor Bhatt, when he talks about how as a person, as a professional, this COVID has unfolded its impact on, right? Maybe there are many positives. We have learned hard lessons of our life the hardest way. Maybe there are also some positives in so far as being professionals, but maybe there are some challenges. Some of the things that you talked about are very relevant. If we don't, when you said somebody improved upon his programming, who knows, this is the requirement of today. If I still say I don't know computer, I'm out. If I'm not out, if I don't upgrade myself. So similarly, what are the kinds of things that one can do? We'll take a look at when Professor Bhatt talks to us about COVID-19 impact thus far on a professional and going forward on a professional. Over to Dr. Bhatt.
Thank you, Professor Rana. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. First of all, let me thank Professor Rana Saab for inviting me and allowing me to share my thought about this very important topic, in fact, which covers the whole gamut of mankind, actually. I'll be talking, restricting myself to the professional issues that have affected the business, economy, and so on. Now, this COVID-19, this coronavirus, has shown that we are absolutely fragile and unpredictable. And under these circumstances, when we look at how we behave ourselves, uh, uh, Professor Archana has already talked about it, and therefore I will not go into those details. Now, when we look at the professional aspect, in fact, it has affected all our spheres, whether it is marketing, sales, operations, services, production domain. Everyone in in these domains is affected. All sectors of industries, whether we look at automobile, whether we look at banking sector, whether we look at chemical industries, consumer industry, healthcare sector, infrastructure, insurance, mining, transportation, you name any sector, this has affected it. And everyone is worried about it. It has affected a lot of people, especially the four most important sectors where it has drastically affected. The ILO says that the food and accommodation, the hospitality sector has been affected, where more than 15 crore people are working. It has affected retail and wholesale sector, where more than 50 crore people, 500 million people are working. It has affected the business services and administration, where more than 1.6 million, 160 million people. It has affected the manufacturing sector, the biggest sector, where more than 500 million people are working. This constitutes about 37% of this
Your voice is getting a little interrupted. So I was just sharing, your data that you talked about.
I'll try to directly from
food and accommodation, 144 million workers. Retail and wholesale, 482 million. That's the data that you shared. Business services and administration, 157 million. Manufacturing, 463 million. All of this constitutes about 37.5%
of global employment. Yes. Now, besides this, there are many other sectors. If we look at the frontline workers, like doctors, nurses, medical staff, drivers, police, they again are keeping us safe, actually. They are working in this crisis. They are directly involved in this fight. And therefore,
140 million to be precise, as of 2 days back data.
Yes, 140 million people are there working in this area. So therefore, it has affected, what I'm trying to say, it has affected everyone. It has affected, in fact, more in the urban areas, where a lot of people like waste recyclers, street vendors, food servers, construction workers, transport workers, and many daily wage earners are there, and they have been completely shattered actually during this period. In India, we have felt its servant, in fact. 90% of our people are working in informal sector of economy. So therefore, 400, which means 40 crore people are vulnerable, and they are at the verge of facing greater poverty in the near future. And this is happening not only in India, but globally, in fact, it is happening. Now, when we look at these businesses, these industries, we find that it is also affecting them at the multiple levels. Has resulted in economic slowdown, business disruptions. It has resulted in trade hindrances, travel obstructions, and many other aspects, and has impacted at system level, operational level, commerce level, supply chain level, leadership level, and it has affected at the workplace, which is very, very important. Now, today, whatever it is, this is the negative part of it, we have to come out of it. And therefore, it is important for us that we have to think of survival to adoption. So far, we were talking about how do we survive. Therefore, now we have to go to next stage where we have to think of how do we adopt ourselves in this new situation where new situations have been created, and this is very, very important. Another area which we have not touched and nobody is touching it as of today is the agriculture sector. Nobody
Yes.
has been able to assess the impact of coronavirus on agriculture.
And its contribution to the economy.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
And if this agriculture is not taken care of by the respective countries, the governments, especially in the developing countries, it may create risk of food insecurity. So therefore, the governments will have to take measures in order to support everyone, and we have to look into these aspects very carefully. When we look at now what needs to be done, besides these, though government has announced these measures like lockdown and some other measures also, yet the amount of collateral damage which has happened is unprecedented as of today. And therefore, we need to go beyond the traditional way of thinking that how do we repair this corporate sector and also maintain connectivity, motivation, the excitement among the people who are working in these sectors will become very, very important. And one of the most important thing again, when people will come back to these organizations, the most important thing which will become important, the most important thing will be the employee safety. And this will become the critical issue in all cases, in fact, in all sectors, which is very, very important. And if we do not adhere to those precautions which need to be taken, there will be definitely legal repercussions. There will be irretrievable damage and the credibility and reputation and the loss in financial items which will take place. I consider human life to be the most priceless and the irreparable, and therefore their safety has to be taken as of paramount importance. Sooner these organizations embrace this fact and put safeguards in place, better it will be. Because these people for whom you will be doing it, for whom the corporations, organizations, industries, the business people will be doing it, then these people can become more productive, they can become more motivated, they can become more engaged, and they can also become strong ambassadors for these organizations in future. So therefore, creating an environment that is secured for all the employees has to be strictly followed. As Archana ji said, that leaders who are working in this area need to understand that this COVID must have really changed the psyche and behavior of people. And therefore, our leaders who are working in these organizations, who are making critical decisions, who are leading teams, and have to stay focused. And in order to regain the market, which will be definitely a very high stress on them, they have the responsibility to reshape it again so that they take again they are in a position to capture the market again the way they were doing it earlier. They bring the business back to the normal, how they were doing it. And it will require connecting with the people with whom they are working, both at rational level, at mental level, as well as at the physical level. Similarly, when we look at the healthcare and wellness sector, there is a tremendous boost, in fact, which has taken place. We in the country had one laboratory where this virus could be detected. Today, we have more than 350 laboratories where this is happening. There were very few doctors who were able to handle it. There were very few hospitals where this could be handled. And today, we have many hospitals, doctors, labs, which are handling this. Therefore, what has happened is, in fact, a lot of changes have taken place in this sector also. Another area, the manufacturing, which is going, which everybody is talking about, that India has capacity to come up and become the global leader, global player. Many of the industries from China now, who have foreign bases, are now closing their production there and are interested in shifting to the South Asian countries. So therefore, this is an opportunity for India to go for this manufacturing area, start local manufacturing at lower cost and better efficiency, which we are capable of doing. This definitely manufacturing has definitely certain constraints, and within these constraints, one has to work. The lockdown, we cannot work, but after this, there will be companies where many companies might lay off their employees.
Right.
This can lead to employment. Yes,
we'll, Dr. Bach, we will expect all of you maybe towards the concluding remarks. Also, when we are talking about business, social, economic, health side, we'll also have, because this is a university arranged, so I would also expect the three panelists also to touch upon academic issues.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that.
And
I will
also
definitely come to that.
The spiritual world. But right now, just take a pause for a minute or so. I will just be delighted, because that may help you trigger. We have a relation with one of the universities abroad. So exchanging just simple pleasantry, courtesy mails, you'll be surprised to hear what I got a mail colleague of mine has sent. We have a collaboration with St. Cloud University in USA. It's a good university, looking at the various things that the mail on my courtesy, on our courtesy request that we have been sending to all my colleague, my vice chancellor had sent a mail just to know about the welfare, right? The mail I'm just reading out, it came only yesterday. So maybe the panel members will also take cognizance of this and talk to us about the implications of COVID in academic setting, personal, professional, and spiritual world. I'm just taking the liberty before I request Himanshu to, give us his insights, because time is short. So I'll just hurriedly in a minute read out the mail. I can't put it there because it is somebody's mail to somebody. At the university, which is in Minnesota, state Minnesota, at the university and state end, things are bad. The state of Minnesota had a budget surplus of 1.8 billion. This week's forecast is 2.4 billion deficit, all a result of the partial shutdown since 15th March. St. Cloud State University also has budget deficit of some $8 million and has offered voluntary golden handshake to some 186 faculty and staff. Departments include computer networking applications, computer science, electrical engineering, environmental and technological studies, sciences, business, management, physics, political science, and many others. We are seeing drop in demand for the coming fall, and from early surveys, and universities are very nervous about it. Just sharing, the scene from one of our partners. Maybe you can also look at its impact and influence on academia at the higher education sector. I'll come back to you. I request Himanshu to just let us through his words of wisdom on the spirituality aspect.
Let me complete this the professional part, because we have still
just 1 minute, because otherwise we'll not be able to
see the
take 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll try to close it. So when we look at the manufacturing part, I'm sure that there will be layoffs, and this layoff can lead to ultimately unemployment, recession, and everyone will try to eliminate redundancy. Automation will take place, cloud usage will increase, new entrepreneurs and micro entrepreneurs will rise, and therefore new jobs will be created, which probably will take away some older jobs, but the new jobs will emerge, and therefore the economy will re-emerge and start creating its impact.
Yes, it will bounce back. We are optimistic. Yes.
Yes. And when we look at the knowledge economy, we will find that the people will now start talking about the older people, training them in new skills, which will become very, very important. The quick reskilling and upskilling will become important. There will be a lot of fresh graduates who will require a different type of skill set, which is required in the industry, which will become important. So the fitment is not based on the qualification, but it will be based on the
skill sets and competencies.
Very, very important. Now, another thing which is happening, what you said in the educational sector.
I'll come back to you, Professor Bhatt. I'll come back to you on the education component. I will solicit inputs from all of you, but let us have the discussion by Professor Himanshu on the most critical. Not that the others were not critical, but this ultimately, to me as a person, is the last thing that one takes a recourse to. Over to Himanshu.
Right. Thank you. Thank you once again, Professor Rana, for inviting me into such an amazing panel. I'll try to keep myself short. And considering that you have asked me to speak about the spiritual aspect, let me try and understand as to what does spirituality really mean and how has that definition of spirituality changed in this COVID period itself in my own experience, as I've seen people coming to the spiritual element and how they have approached the spiritual element. So the word spirituality comes from the Sanskrit adhyatma. And adhyatma is a combination of two words, adhi atma, atma dwara adhikrit. And atma itself has three meanings to it. So the first meaning of atma is the self. And I think that is where we were in the pre-COVID time, that we thought that anything which was justified by self was the right thing to do. Because when we talk about a spiritual element, we say, what is the right thing to do? And how do I determine that this is the right thing to do? And therefore, the theory or the manahasthiti, the belief of the people was that whatever is justified by me, by my desire, by what is it that I want out of life is going to be the right thing to do. Subsequently, there's another meaning to Atma, and that is God. So once the COVID came in and once people started looking at the devastating effects of the pandemic, I think they moved towards that, okay, now we have to believe in God and only God can help us. So the entire outlook changed from trying to justify actions through what was good to me to what does really God want. And subsequently, many of them also realized, when people used to talk to me that I think Bhagwan hi mere ko bacha sakta hai, I used to tell them that dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi, jo sukh mein sumiran kare to dukh kahe ko hoye. So it's only when it comes to such times, if you start thinking of a higher power, or if you start thinking beyond you, beyond the self, in that case, there is bound to be this anxiousness which is going to creep in. But I think now slowly, there is a definite move, like what Professor Archana Shukla also spoke about, that people are thinking about a greater good. People are thinking about a larger universe outside of them. So the third meaning of Atma is conscience. And I think that is where people are now moving, conscience ke dwara adhikrit, antaratma. So which means anything which is justified by my conscience is going to be the right thing to do. And therefore, in this entire setup where we thinking of Atma as conscience, the definition of spirituality that we have come up with, and that is something that we believe in now, is that spirituality is the understanding of your own self, of the universe around you, and your relationship with this particular universe. And I'm going to spend some 2 minutes talking about this. When you say understanding of your own self, what do you mean? And since we have both the students and the faculty over here, what does it mean to you when you say, when somebody asks you the question, who are you? So for example, if you ask me the question, who are you? And I answer to you saying, I'm Himanshu, the director of IIM Indore, I'm talking from a very superficial level of my identity, because I'm equating my identity with the designation that I hold. And therefore, one of my suggestions to everyone out here who's listening to us, to all the attendees, is never, ever, never try to equate your sense of self-worth, your sense of self-respect, and your identity to the designation that you hold. Because remember, the day the designation goes, so will your sense of self-worth. And the designation will go away. I'm not going to be the director of IIM Indore forever. I'm going to be the director of IIM Indore for exactly 3 years and 8 more months. And after that, I cease to be the director. And therefore, the moment I start associating my identity and my self-worth with this, in that case, it's a very dicey road that I'm going to. So I think this realization in a very spiritual way is coming to people. And therefore, if somebody asks me, who are you? I will say, I'm a teacher. Or I'll say, I'm a mountaineer. And therefore, all of those people in the attendees who are teachers, or somebody who says, I'm a student, even a teacher is a student forever. Day before yesterday, I was speaking another webinar, and I said the thing that I like about teaching the most is that it gives me an opportunity to be a lifelong learner. And when you say you're a teacher, you are actually somebody who's influencing minds. Likewise, when you say you are a student, you are actually saying that in all humility, I know that there is so much more to learn. I have always believed in the Socratic axiom, and Socrates said a very beautiful thing amongst many other great things that he said. He said, education and learning is the progressive realization of your own ignorance. And that's a beautiful statement to make. Education and learning is the progressive realization of your own ignorance. The more you learn, the more you realize how ignorant you are. And I think that is something, once again, that people are realizing, since a lot of people have now gotten into reading, because I get a lot of requests, people asking me, which is that book that I should start with in this particular genre, or what would you recommend I start reading? And when I tell them about the books, and when we discuss those books, they say, oh my God, I didn't even know that this existed. And therefore, there is this slow but certain realization of your true identity. And I think the movement is going to be towards understanding this true identity. The second element is, what is the universe around there? So your own self, understanding your own self, and understanding the universe around you. Now here, once again, I don't want to be normative. All I would point out is that it is not my place to decide who your universe is. Because if you are a Ganesh, your parents are your universe. And if you're a Kartikeya, the entire world is your universe. So you choose today what your universe is. And I think the definition of universe today is changing for a lot of people. Earlier, people thought from a very spiritual perspective that my universe is my family, my kith and kin, and my near and dear ones. But now people realize, like Professor Rana pointed out initially, that for everyone, it was that virus which was in a country, which was very far away from us. And suddenly you have realized that nothing is too far to impact you. Anything and everything that we do has a reaction, has an impact on the universe. And therefore, the definition of the universe itself has expanded in the minds of people. And now they know that they are connected to everyone. Everyone is interconnected. In fact, you are not away from any other human being on this planet beyond 6 degrees of separation. And that's a study which has actually established that within 6 degrees, you would know every other human being on this planet. And this realization now has dawned upon people that their universe cannot be confined to their family. It cannot be confined to their community. It cannot be confined to their religion, to their caste, to their gender. It has to go beyond. And the moment you start accepting that you are a part of the universe, which is beyond, which is all encompassing, the third element that comes in is, what is your relationship with this universe? And by virtue of understanding your relationship with this universe, you also understand your responsibility and your obligations towards this universe. So for example, if we talk about how are we related to the universe, most of these pandemics have happened simply because we have not been in harmony with the universe around us. So this one came from possibly some kind of a wet market in Wuhan, but clearly it is a realization and it is a consequence of our unharmonious relationship with the universe comprising of other living beings. And therefore, I think the third realization that is coming in is that we need to be at one with nature. We are actually going back to our natural ways. So suddenly, people who love to shake hands are saying, saying namaste is possibly a better idea. Suddenly, everyone is talking about natural products. Suddenly, everyone hates chemicals. Suddenly, everyone is talking about the kind of a hygiene that we always spoke about, that you should wash your hands before eating, you should wash your hands after eating, you should leave your footwear outside your house, so on and so forth. So all of this was not merely a responsibility towards your personal hygiene, but it was also a responsibility towards other people, towards the universe around you. For example, I still remember my grandparents, whenever they used to eat, they always used to keep 2 parts of the rotis. One was for the cow, which was there in our house, and the other was for the dog, which was outside the house. And only then they would eat. In fact, one of my uncles, my father's elder brother, he never ate before he actually fed the cow. Any of his meals. He wouldn't eat any of his meals unless he fed the cow. Now, there is this increasing realization, therefore, that going ahead, we will have to be in unison with this nature around us. And therefore, my final thing in a minute, while this transition is happening, what I would recommend to all the attendees and in particular the students, please understand that we owe a certain responsibility while this pandemic is creating havoc in our worlds in multiple ways. It is also providing us with lots of opportunities. Professor Archana Shukla talked about strengthening of the relationships with people you may not have found, or at least you would have thought that you did not have the time to talk to them. This is also the time to actually display self-leadership. So for example, currently we are running IIM Indore. So although we don't have students, we only have 90 students and most of them are doctoral students. For them, this happens to be home, but there are 20 other students who could not go home because of some or the other reason. But we have 150 families and this entire campus to run. And we have only 1/4 or even less the number of staff like housekeeping, like gardening, etc., or security people. So what did we do? We started asking for volunteers. And you'll be surprised that the entire community came together as one. And I have faculty, staff, and students actually holding the security posts. I actually have people doing gardening. I have people looking after the dog shelter because IIM Indore also has a dog shelter where we take care of the strays, not just within the campus, but even around the campus, outside, etc., etc. And finally, I think the most difficult part was cleaning and sweeping, for which it was difficult to find volunteers, jharu lagana, pocha lagana. And therefore, I decided that that was a part that I will take up. So the first time when I went to Lagao Jharu and to mop the academic block, I had about 5-6 people with me. Then they got to know that, okay, the director is over here. The next time when I went there a week later, so we are doing this weekly. So every week we give those 1/4 employees a complete off and we take over the entire charge, apart from helping them every day. The second week when I went, there were 10-15 people. And the last time when I went there, we had almost 25 people. Everyone wanted to do it. And therefore, what you have to understand is that there is nothing spectacular that was needed over here. There were no speeches that were needed. There were no letters that were needed. All that was needed was an idealized influence. Don't wait for the government to do things. Don't wait for the authorities of your institution to do things. Don't wait for your resident welfare association of your housing society to do things. Pick up the broom, start cleaning. Take out whatever it is that you have, whatever it is that you can spare out of whatever money that you have saved, start giving. And the joy that you would find, if at all you can leave your surroundings cleaner than how you found them, and if at all you can leave people happier than how you found them, I think you have done your bit to the universe. I'll stop here.
Great, Himanshu, for this words of wisdom, full of insight. And this shows leading from the front and paving the way. I will open this discussion for about 5 minutes to all the panelists, but let me also, take this opportunity. In these trying times, we had at our university find a way to reach out to the government. That was what my leadership had told me. Find out how can you make a connect with the government, not for COVID, but for other purposes. So it so occurred to our students, some student volunteers, they said, sir, everybody's being taken care of. Government has put everything in place. Now there isn't anything that is formally made, provision as to reach out to these elderly people, particularly the elderly whose kids by virtue of COVID or otherwise are not with them. And they are the people who need desperate help in terms of maybe some medicines, maybe some food, maybe some talking to. Those are the kinds of things they need. So we have done our homework. We have done some kind of a research and we have found out there is a nationwide organization already existing. And we have reached out to them and they said, fine, if you are okay with the idea, why don't you go out? Trust you me, the team of students came forward on their own with this idea. And then we made sure that we met the government authorities. In the first place, they were so reluctant, knowing that it is one of those universities, one of those organizations, one of those student bodies. But they said, no, Mr. Vice Chancellor, you have to come in person and explain to me what is it all about. I don't want any dilution at this stage. I have so many responsibilities towards the state. One more thing, I don't. I said, sir, nothing doing. We are just seeing that how can our students help you to supplement what you are already doing. So once he understood the way, once he understood the process, once he understood the procedure, he was quite convinced. And that to me, Himanshu, has been in operation for the last 2 weeks. And the results have been mind-boggling. The kind of request that this team of student volunteers have handled has given them so much joy, so much satisfaction that they have been able to reach out to those people who needed their help in terms of maybe small medicine. Maybe, there was one student, if you would have seen my Facebook, there are some stories that they have put it on. How was it easing the, comfort level of the elderly people, particularly at the age of 80, 85, those who were without food for some days, those who were without conversation for weeks, so on and so forth. Now, I'm just giving you this example to relate. If you are by intent, honest, sincere, and serious about a thing, there's no looking back. You don't need government machinery. You don't need, regulatory bodies to come out. The idea has to be good. Now, touching upon it, Himanshu, let me also share with other panel members. Once we were whole hog on it, we had to begin with a student body of 8 to 10 people. Now, what we had thought, I had suggested to the faculty group, use these students who are our MBA 1, MBA 2 students, because they have been placed, but their joining is delayed. Their internships are delayed. So they might find this kind of an experience good. And fortunate for us, we had done some small course with those students. When the course was being taught, the course was C-learning course of Emory University. Out of that course, we had tried to talk to them about 3 areas: compassion, mindfulness, and ethics. At that time, they did it because it was a course, it was a credit course. They did exams, they did projects, they did assignments, they went to labs, they saw everything. The components were helping yourself, identify yourself, that the way you said, identifying the universe you are a part of, reaching out to the universe, mixing with the universe. So all those components were talked about. Now, when they were doing this service through this sharing caring group, they came up with an idea. My team said, now, sir, their work from home is over. They can start working in their organizations. So they may not be available. Trust you me, the kinds of things that came from the students was, no, sir, whatever we are doing, wherever we are doing, we'll continue with this because this is really giving us more satisfaction than will give us the kind of job or the perks. We'll continue to do that. So it is in the same sync as you are explaining. If you are there at heart and end, you will just make sure everything is possible. I would now request the panel members for about 5 or 6 minutes to tell us, COVID-19 impact as of now on academia very briefly and going forward. If Archana could tell us, anything that you have experienced during these 2 months at IIM Lucknow, leading the institution, what has been there on academics? What has been the thought process? What are the transformation measures? I know you will say people have been exposed to online teaching, so on and so forth. But is there any other thing that you have seen? People working from home, of course, digital use, technology use, so on and so forth. Anything that you would add on as IIM Lucknow?
We have already elaborated all the aspects, because this itself is the biggest change which is going to happen in the working style of people. The way you used to work earlier and now post-COVID, the way you are required to take certain measures, as Professor Bhatt said in the beginning. Now the workplaces itself, you need to respond to the all the advisories of the government which keep coming to us from time to time. You have not to call all the staff together, so you will do staggering of the staff. Now the biggest challenge would be that the very vulnerable lot will come to you when they land up at whatever stage they come to the campus. So 1,000 people together in the campus. Now you have a big responsibility, right, to save the community, and this is a community including students. Now, how are you going to plan their classes? Now you can't put all of them together, so this will require a lot of infrastructural planning. Yeah. Then you need to also understand in terms of like their hostel life, because you need to also take care of not inside the class, but what they do post classes. Yeah, community as a student, you need to take care of that. You are the guardians. So institutes will have a huge responsibility to consider this as a lab for 3-4 months, Because once you are able to take care of these 3-4 months after the lockdown is open, then I think suddenly your normalcy will return, and then it becomes a part of life. Then people also will learn to live with that, and the self kind of, they will watch on their own that what they need to take care of. So a lot of things, your mess, students are eating in the mess. So we are a residential campus. Now we need to understand that how to handle 1,000 students in one go, and how do you not to plan, crowding of in the mess. So what in needs of academic calendar, how you need to devise that, yeah, how the classes need to be done. Also, one has to learn that digital blended mode of learning. Now this is going to be the way of life. No looking back on that. So if any campus who is not digitally, very well off, you need to augment the relevant infrastructure. Digital revolution is going to take place in the world altogether. Virtuality is going to remain as the reality, whether you like it or not. Whether there are some proponent of the learning who say face to face, nothing matches face to face. So no matter which school you belong to, which school of thought you belong to, but you need to get adjusted to this new demand, which is blended mode of learning. So now you may not deliver 100% through blended mode, but I think one has to explore all the platforms of learning which we haven't explored so far. Yeah, earlier we never felt the need for having it, but now we need to, in a way, do it, right? We need to also engage, as you said, when we say we have adopted villages. So it will not remain a concept of adoption only. Now your concern should be that post-COVID lockdown, that you need to also understand that how those villages are responding to COVID. Yeah, you need to also take your students there. Now this is where what Himanshu was earlier mentioning, that you know who you are. Now if you redefine yourself and not with that narrow boundary, right, and then you expand it, feel part of the universe, whichever way you have defined your universe, you will find inclusiveness. And I think there is a need for developing and nurturing and reinforcing that, inclusiveness on this earth. Now this is to retain in the students to values which you are planning to inculcate in your education system, and new kind of approach, new kind of culture, new kind of attitude, new kind of adaptiveness, resilience, put together. So all this will be witnessed in campuses.
But sir, we have heard from the leaders of best of the best institutions, not that you have not run best of the best institutions in engineering education, but you are also familiar with what are the ground realities of not so best of the best institutions. Keeping that as the backdrop, can you just suggest what have you been trying at your university in terms of, particularly, are there new thoughts coming up on introducing some new courses? Are you looking at faculty training and sensitization on some areas with which they can cope up with this changing technologies? Third thing, could you also give us an insight as to how has your university gone ahead with assessment evaluation mechanisms? So these three areas, if you could just tell us very briefly, what has been your experience, view, approach, direction in your university, having handled and run best of the best engineering institutions? I have given the background to our co-panelists, but also being aware of the ground realities of not that best of the best institutions. Very briefly.
Yes, thank you very much. As soon as this started, in fact, and the university started closed it for the students, we immediately went to the online mode because we had the IT infrastructure which was sufficient for starting our online classes. Right at that stage, we started training our faculty members, and therefore it became very easy for us to start online education. And till today, we have conducted more than 25,000 online classes in the university for our 8,000 students, 25,000 sessions. Now, it has in fact shown that the role of faculty has completely changed. From the knowledge giver, it is now, in fact, he has become a lifelong learner. What was said, in fact, this will definitely change the systems. And now the focus is student learning, because now the student has also become responsible for his learning also, and therefore the material is being sent to him, the e-content is being sent to him, videos are being sent to him, a lot of material is being sent. But now is he reading and then having the discussion with the faculty members? So the classrooms have become now more not like delivering lectures, but the discussion mode. So therefore, it has increased the creativity, critical thinking, communication skills, and collaborations, because this has also happened during this period. There has been, in fact, people have been talking about that. How do we create teams and how do we address to the new things? During this period, a lot of competitions were there, and our students have been able to enter into the innovation section also. Earlier, there were very few who were doing it, but there have been more than 15 new innovations which have come up during this period, which normally would have taken maybe years actually. So the whole university, in fact, immediately shifted to this new system, the new innovation culture. And I'm sure that this culture will continue to there. This is a system which will remain there. In fact, we got feedback from the students also, from the parents also, and most of them, let me say 90% of the people are appreciating that we have been able to engage every single lecture and over of these students, and therefore this is what is very, very important. We also conducted, the assessment part of it, we also conducted assessments. Now, every week, there is the assessment taking place. And therefore, what we used to talk about the continuous evaluation, which was actually a myth, now actually that is taking place. So every class is, you are being assessed, and you to keep on gaining that in your summative assessment ultimately, which evaluates you and gives you grades and other things. There are new things which will happen in the system. What will happen will become the new players will start coming into the system. Instructional designers will come into the picture. Campus learning organizations will start happening. People will start reorganizing or restructuring and making them as an integral part of the system, which will start happening. This online program has also taught us, education has taught us, how do we address our students who are to get admission during this period? So therefore, that marketing concept, this has developed, and therefore, I find that this has definitely helped the education sector to move ahead. It has helped us to connect with the many industries. There are a lot of industries who have helped us in designing and delivering courses. We must have had more than maybe about 100 such webinars for our students and our faculty, which is very, very important. Besides this, as far as this this is concerned, the spiritual part is being talked about. In our case, the university is actively participating in some of the activities.
Dr. Bhatt, your voice is not clear. Your voice is not clear.
The social responsibility which you are talking about, we distribute 1,500 kgs every month to the old age homes. During this period, we cleaned all the area of Faridabad railway stations. Blood donation camps were organized, and people have gone to help people. Every week, we are giving ration to 1,000 families. So this, in fact,
but sir, we may run out of time. We just thank you so much. These are useful insights. But I will come back to you if my time permits. I'll come back to you, Dr. Bhatt, because in the last VC webinar we had organized, in that you had made a point that in this online mode of education, delivery, assessment, and evaluation, we have to make sure that students are made more responsible. Maybe since our audience here is predominantly students and faculty, not only of our university, but from other universities, you may speak a word or two about that. What did you mean by students owning up the responsibility? But before that, before Professor Bhatt, I'll go to Himanshu.
I'll just give you an answer in 1 minute. See, what was happening was that the teacher would complete his syllabus and think that everything is done. And he was accountable for that. Today now, because the mode of learning has changed, it has come to the blended mode of learning. And therefore, the student is supposed to learn actually. Not only he is supposed to come prepared. And therefore, the
whole game has changed. The student has become the part of the learning process, actually, complete process, and he owns it now. And therefore, I think that this system is going to stay for a long time and with students ultimately.
That's a valid point. I'll come back to you for some more clarification on that a little later. May I request Himanshu sir, I mean, with the kind of way you are running IIM Indore, we see it from media, we see it from all quarters. Every other day, there is something new happening. People talk about IIM Indore as a happening place in more ways than one. I was just wanting to know, no, honestly, I mean what I'm saying. I was just wanting to know, has this COVID-19 or stuff like this triggered your thought process in terms of, in your management curriculum, adding a course or two, or, something that you are doing in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the pedagogy, in terms of the assessment and evaluation? Are you looking at it differently with a bit of different fine tuning or adding a word here and there? Just guide us on that. What is the way forward at IIM Lucknow in terms of sensitizing students on issues that you talked about? Is there some mechanism which has made it mandatory in the curriculum to make sure that the students, when they go out of IIM Indore, they are complete, integrated, apart from being just people in marketing, people in finance, they turn out as complete human beings?
Yeah. So a couple of things. I'm sorry that, we're running out of time and
no, we have time.
I had to go somewhere. So I'll very quickly try and put across and answer the question that, to begin with, the first thing that this pandemic has done, and I'm so glad that it has actually done it, it has reaffirmed what I had been trying to do at IIM Indore. So you said that IIM Indore has been in the news, and it has been in the news simply because I have been of the firm view that we at IIMs have not done enough. We have not done enough for people around us. And therefore, I took it upon myself as a mandate that we have to do far more for people around us, which means that the community that we are in, as well as people who are not directly linked or related to IIM Indore. So that was one. And this pandemic has actually thrown out a lot of opportunities. And how has it reaffirmed all of this? For the simple reason that now we have realized that there were so many things that we preached, but we did not practice. And now we are getting to practice all of this. For example, good systems of management, good strategic management. None of the IIMs has had a digital strategy. So one of the things that we have initiated, and we've been talking about in other fora as well, that we need to have a digital strategy. We've been talking about cooperation and coordination as the skills which will be required in the post-fourth industrial world. And we hardly coordinate amongst ourselves. We find it very difficult for 20 IIMs to sit together and come to a decision. Or for that matter, I'm sure that even if we open a debate over here, it'll be very difficult for 4 of us to come to an agreement with everything. So I think this pandemic has taught us this, that look, we can't work in silos. We as human beings are the only living being who needs at least 1.5 years of support to even stand up and start walking. All other animals can do it within a matter of minutes or at the most a matter of days. So by very virtue of who we are, we need to coordinate and we need to cooperate with each other. And therefore, all of these systems and the best practices that we have. So one of the things that we have decided is that whatever we do at IIM Indore, we will put it out there in the open. We will put it out there on the media. We'll put it out there on our website. Anybody who wants to take it, learn from it, may take it. In fact, we are also going to put all our course outlines, all our material and whatever it is that we suggest all out there. Because this is the time to share resources. This is the time to pool in resources. And this is the time to learn from others and work together. That is one. Second, it has also broken that sense of complacency. So for example, although everyone did go online and very quickly we shifted from an in-class mode to an online mode, most of the faculty really don't understand that online teaching is a completely different pedagogical tool. It is not as if you can sit in front of a computer and do exactly what you used to do in the classroom. And that is a big learning. And therefore, we have also started training for our own faculty on how to teach online, because this was an assumption that people made that teaching online is sitting in front of the computer and doing exactly the same thing. We can't. And in several of our courses, for example, what Professor Archana Shukla teaches, team building, or what I teach in terms of negotiation, we can't do what we do in the classroom in front of a computer, because we need those games, we need those exercises, we need those simulations to be carried out. And therefore, now we have to rethink the entire course itself. So to answer your question, Professor Raina, not only are we introducing new courses, we are reimagining the existing courses, because they cannot be taught the way we were teaching them. So for example, at IIM Indore, we use the case method. If you have 20 sessions, almost 15 or 16 cases were discussed. You can't have that in an online mode. And therefore, now you will have to think of a completely different set of pedagogical tools for even the existing things. Right. Apart from that, what we are doing is we are thinking of those courses where we can actually talk about how to handle crisis. So in each of the courses, be it finance, be it operations, be it marketing, be it HR, we will introduce a term called how do you do this in the times of a crisis? How do you communicate during a crisis? How do you handle operations during a crisis? How do you take care of the last mile problem during a crisis? How do you market during a crisis? So all of this is going to happen. And in fact, I'm glad, because this to me is the silver lining in this otherwise disastrous pandemic. Right.
Thank you so much. Over to Ashwani. Can you just, put up if there are some questions, broad-based, general, which can be put to the panel, or if there are some questions which can be put to a specific panel member. Over to Ashwani for a minute or so.
Well, thank you. Thank you so very much, sir. So we have a very pinpointed question to Professor Himanshu Rai. There is one attendee who said that we are not very, very conscious about our physical health in educational institutions of higher learning. So it's good to say, good to talk about spirituality, etc. But is it that we are not, we are simply doing a lip service to the physical health of our people in HEIs?
Yeah, so I saw that Professor Singh has asked that question. In fact, I had made note of that question because he was the only one who referred to me as Himanshu the Mountaineer. So thank you so much, first of all, for addressing me as Himanshu the Mountaineer. But you're absolutely right. See, when we talk about mountaineering, or when we talk about any form, wherever you get your own spiritual experiences, the fitness has to come in. But allow me to differentiate between being physically fit and between being muscular with, rippling gym muscles, etc. It is a nuance which has been known to us in our culture and civilization, where our civilization always taught us that a healthy mind can reside only in a healthy body. Swasth sharir mein hi swasth mastish ka vaas ho sakta hai. And therefore, to be able to even apply your mind, let alone spiritual pursuit, even to apply your mind, you have to be physically healthy. But please do not equate physical health with rippling muscles. Because giving you example right from our mountaineering times, I've done several expeditions, including climbs as well as long treks. And I've seen people with rippling muscles actually cry out there. Why? Because there you require mental toughness. You require a fit body, but you require mental toughness. So my suggestion to you would be, don't go about looking at your body weight or how you look or how you feel, etc. Just go about, do you feel fit? And are you taking care of your body? And once again, I don't want to be prescriptive as to what works. For me, yoga works. So I do yoga, but do whatever it works for you. For example, I know of several friends of mine who say that running works for them. In fact, running for them is a spiritual experience. The moment they cross 5 or 6 kilometers while running, they get a completely different experience altogether. I don't like running, and therefore I cannot talk about running, but I love climbing and I love walking. So whatever works for you, Pilates, yoga, gym, whatever, but just make sure that you are doing so not because of any other reason, because you owe it to yourself. You owe it to yourself to be fit. You owe it to yourself to be mentally strong, and a mental strength can come only in a healthy body. And oh, sorry. So in the institution, yes. Since your second part was, are we doing anything in the institutions of higher learning? Absolutely. So at IIM Indore, not only do we have a cricket stadium and all kinds of possible indoor and outdoor spaces. But the thing that I did after I took over as the director of this place was that wherever there is an empty space at IIM Indore, I put either a badminton net or a volleyball net or some sporting thing over there so that none of my students can complain that they do not have a place where they can play in within 100 meters from wherever they are at any point in the campus.
Thank you, sir. There's one more that has come offline. There is another ex-student of ours who has asked a very pinpointed question to you. It's about the cause and effect thinking, and he is having this premise that is it this cause effect thinking that has got us into this kind of a mess. So the slave thinking models of the past, which says that I got angry because X did this. Instead of that, why don't we have a modern thinking that I got angry because I want to achieve Y? So are there actually any predefined purpose of human life which devoid us of any free will? So this is a typical one.
I can see why Professor Archana Shukla is smiling, because to answer this question, we'll need probably another hour and a half. And I think she can equally answer this question, discovering self, etc. But very quickly, I will now in here, I'm going to be a little normative simply because of the paucity of time. So number one, there is no such thing as human beings not having free will. All of us have free will. In fact, free will is what differentiates us from animals. Animals also have a genetic material. Animals also have some kind of a conditioning. Animals are also brought up in a certain way. The only difference between animals and human beings is that animals will necessarily work out of their instinct. So an ant which is walking in a line cannot suddenly decide that I'm not going to walk in this line, I'm going to turn left and go. It can't. It has to. After the death of a queen bee, there cannot be a democratic process where the bees will decide who the next queen bee would be. It is decided a priori that this bee hatching out of this particular egg will become the next queen bee. In case of human beings, we don't follow instincts. So we can eat even if we are not hungry, unlike an animal which would not. We will drink even if we are not thirsty, so on and so forth. So we certainly have free will, and free will is what differentiates us. So the freedom to make choices lies with us. Now, when you talk about the cause effect kind of thing, and when you say I got angry because so-and-so did this, there I have a suggestion to make. In fact, I will be doing an FB Live on how to resolve conflicts tomorrow itself on my Facebook, where I am going to answer this particular question. But suffice to say over here is that the moment you make a conflict personal, it is going to become dysfunctional. So whenever you get angry or whenever you're in a situation of conflict, the first thing that you need to do is acknowledge your role in that conflict. Take responsibility that you are also responsible. And I'm not saying to this percent or that percent or whatever, but you are also responsible for this to have happened. So for example, instead of telling the other person that, look, whatever you're saying does not make sense, say that I have not understood what you have tried to say, because now you're taking responsibility on yourself and not blaming the other person for not having articulated things so well. The moment you start taking responsibility, even your anger is going to come down on other people, because you will realize you have a role to play in everything that happens in this universe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Over to you, Professor Raina, because most of it, they appear to be a bit.
Yeah, it's indeed, there would be several questions, but for paucity of time, we may not be able to take. But I can make sure if there are questions from some of you colleagues, friends, students, faculty, please do not hesitate to drop those to me. I'll get them routed to the concerned person, and you will get your responses from each and every one of them. We'll not be able to accommodate more questions now. I would in the end take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to each and every panel member for having readily, when this idea occurred to me, trust you me, the members in the audience, the first phone I made to, not even phone, I just sent a WhatsApp message to Himanshu. Within a second, he said yes. Same happened with Archana, same happened with Bhatt Saab. And I can't describe how they have been very, very straightforward and instantaneous to respond to this request. That is the way they are. That's the way I take pride in these companies and associations. And we look forward to more inputs from them going forward in terms of helping us to see what best we can do at this university. I will end this wonderful, insightful, engaging, fruitful, enriching discussion by a small little prayer which caught my attention today. And I'm sure Himanshu would have read that book. Archana would have also read that book. It is from Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Peale. I'm sure you would have read it, but I would like, if everybody permits, to read it out for all of us in the panel and also in the audience. Be with me when I say what I say out of that prayer. And I have tried to do it in my own little way to whatever extent it can. And the prayer is, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change. God, grant me the serenity. Serenity is the word, to accept the things that I cannot change. And courage. Courage is the second word. And courage to change the things that I can. And courage to change the things that I can. And wisdom. Third word is wisdom. And the wisdom to know the difference, what I can and what I cannot. This probably sums up the essence of dealing with COVID as of now and going forward. We have seen, not to this extent and magnitude, COVIDs in the past also, we have come winners. I know my submission will be to all the panel members and also the audience. Yes, looking at how COVID-19 is unfolding for a nation like ours, be prepared for the worst, but always hope for the best. Always hope for the best. Do whatever we have tried to put across. That to me is the way forward. Whether as a person, do those corrective measures. It has come to our rescue big way. Do whatever is needed by the profession and the professionals to stay ahead. Do whatever is required to be done and get to the last version of the most important part, spirituality. We know when we fail otherwise, we normally used to go there. But I think this is the time when we have to think first about that and go to the other areas second. Thank you so very much for your wonderful time and agreeing to my request instantaneously. Thank you once again. And I request Ashwini to close the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.